Hey, this is the Antisocial Socialite back at it again. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, you have not yet subscribed. What are you waiting for, darling? Hit that subscribe button, smash that notification bell, so when I get to running this mouth, you are in the loop. Oh, I don't even know what to call this video. It's kind of like Corona chaos, confusion, update. It's all going on. You know, today is Thursday, the 23rd of April. I hope everyone is doing well. You know, I have to start putting the date in the title because it takes so long for a video to upload that I'm attempting multiple times in 24 hours, and it's taking so long that, you know, part 2 is coming 5 days after part 1. Part 2 is arriving before part 1. It's just ridiculous. Okay, so yesterday I did this video, but my storage space, as per usual, is giving me trouble, so I've got to try and do the video again. So everybody is talking about this WO 2020-0606 business, okay? And I am skeptical because I'm looking at this and I'm thinking it's too easy, okay? I feel like there are too many breadcrumbs being left, too many red herrings being put out, too much confusion and misinformation being dispersed for all of this to really be something to be excited about. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Bill Gates is not trying to implement a new type of currency, that he doesn't want to chip people, that he doesn't want to mass vaccinate people. We all know these are things that he has in mind, but it's just become way too easy. You see, years ago when all of this started, you know, whatever you want to call it, conspiracy TV or conspiracy theory TV, conspiracy channels, we have documented evidence of them systematically putting signs and symbols into movies, into music videos, things that people had never heard of, things that people had never, you know, were not aware of even existing. You know, I said this before, I watched a video, I think it was by Nicholson, is it 1986, something like this, and I think it was him, where he showed, like, the video was called Lord of the Rings, and basically it's showing movies from like 20-30 years ago, people wearing Masonic rings, you know, Masonic medallions, logos everywhere. I mean, people who were not Freemasons wouldn't even recognize the ring. So why did you specifically put that in there as a prop if you didn't want it to be something that people see but didn't see? You know, when they first started to talk about, for example, Jay-Z allegedly becoming a Freemason, Forerunner 777, he put out a video called The Jay-Z Deception, and in that it charts his progression through Freemasonry, through the album covers and the titles, how he started out at the beginning, you know, at the elementary level. As he progressed, as he rejected the light and turned to the dark, it's reflected in the art on the album cover. You know, it just seems like it's getting too much now. Okay, we also have this thing with the One World at Home concert with, you know, very blatant people who worship Satan, or they glorify the satanic. Headlining obviously is Lady Gaga, and it's like, I know that celebrities are puppets, celebrities are sold out, but celebrities are often used to, not just to lead the masses, but they're also used to influence people in such a way that they look good, and people who are naive, they are going to follow these people because they feel like, I'm looking at the natural, I'm looking at the tangibles. And why I say that is, like, a lot of people will criticize the church, saying the churches are not doing enough, which is a fair point. But it's always like these celebrities that are going to present themselves like they're doing something benevolent, they have a very corrupt doctrine or ideology behind them, which is not going to be good when you you buy into it. It's like, okay, I'm raising millions of pounds or dollars, I'm donating millions of pounds of dollars to charitable causes, but by the way, I'm into the new age and I worship Satan, and it's like, well, if this is what people who worship Satan do, I don't want to be a Christian. I mean, I just feel like everything that's happening right now, they are playing with people in the alternative media. This is why I said in my last video, should conspiracy theorists, quote unquote, should they rejoice? Should they be excited? To me, I'm like, no. With everything that's happening right now, our focus can't be on the deflections and the distractions that they throw out so easily, so blatantly, because there's a reason why they let this information come out. People are now talking about this hot mic situation where, two people in the White House come in and they start having a conversation and they're letting it out that the numbers are not as high. The death rate is nowhere near as bad and this virus is no better. I mean, again, for all we know, that could all be staged. It could have all been deliberately set up and leaked so that people would become irate. The way I personally think right now is there a virus? Yes. Could there be a pandemic? Maybe. Are the numbers being inflated? Most definitely. But it's kind of like a boy who cried wolf situation. People are getting so fed up with the misinformation and the conflicting information. And, just because the mainstream media is allegedly now trying to tell the truth does not mean that they are telling the truth. The official narrative and the so-called controlled opposition counter-narrative, they're all run by the same people. So just because you've got your mainstream news networks, Fox and MSNBC, for example, or here in the UK, you've got people on ITV, BBC challenging the numbers and challenging this and challenging that, doesn't mean to say that they're trying to give people truth. They're trying to gain trust by appearing to give you the information that was withheld from you before. And a lot of people who have their trust in the mainstream media, they are going to be the ones who are like, see, I told you they weren't telling us everything, and now you see the truth is coming out. No, this is a lie to counteract the first lie, to gain that trust that you were going to... it's two sides of the same coin. It's like this nonsense left-right paradigm. A lot of people are putting their faith in Trump now because they're getting desperate. They think to themselves, well, this man understands business, he likes money, he wants to open up the economy because he's a businessman. Therefore, I'm with Trump because at least I can go back to work and feed my family. But at the end of the day, he's not a virologist. If there really is going to be a surge, he's now going to be blamed for putting profit above people. And so, although you think he's thinking about the people, he's just another puppet being used as the opposition to the guys who are like, no, we need to stay inside, Really and truly, if Sweden is like a control group, let's watch what happens in Sweden. Because we know they didn't socially distance. We know they didn't have a real lockdown. Sweden is obviously not a perfect ideal model comparatively because there are fewer people in Sweden, so they're naturally distanced anyway. But if the infection rate and the death rate is similar to that of a country that bothered with a lockdown, then it goes to show that really and truly social distancing didn't make a difference. So then the questions become, well, why did you shut us down if it didn't really save any more lives? And there were a lot of red herrings in these narratives that people are just, they keep saying, but it becomes so frustrating to hear. For example, people are still talking about people who say 5G caused the virus. Like, hardly anybody is saying this. Hardly anybody is saying this. What people are saying is 5G is weakening people's immune systems. It's causing people to have sleeplessness, fatigue. It has a negative impact on our physical health. And if at certain frequencies, it can hinder our ability to take up oxygen. So the way that I'm looking at this, I'm not excited when I see these major news outlets allegedly trying to give people the truth. No, you're giving people an alternative lie to the original lie to give the illusion that you are giving people the truth. It just seems way too easy. It just seems way too how can I say? It's just too much in the open. It's like a bait, you know. You want to lure somebody in, you make the bait very obvious to increase the chances of them taking it. So we had all of this spin, we had all of these inflated numbers in the beginning of like, oh, in America, 200,000 people could die and millions could die. And then it went down to 80 something, then 60 something. And now the numbers have come right down. And it's like the official numbers and the real numbers are very different. And people are like, why the hell did you close the economy? Da, 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 da. And I had to do something. So it's like the boy who cried wolf. When all of this is said and done, this is one of the first things I want to say. People will be like, you lied to us. We can't trust the government. Blah, 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 blah. And then maybe they could unleash another wave of infections. Or, as we start to mix and mingle again, they give us a little taste of freedom again. They start to lift all the lockdowns and restrictions, and people start to think we can go back to what we had before. They get a little taste of normality and what life was like before all this has happened. And then all of a sudden there's a resurgence of the virus, whether real or otherwise, because when viruses replicate, they mutate by nature. So it's possible that people could be infected again with a different strain that's similar to the first or whatever. And so what's going to happen is then you won't need to gradually lock down the nations. People will be like, oh my gosh, we've got another outbreak of coronavirus. It's worse than the first strain. We need to go into immediate lockdown. So anybody who was kind of on their knees or scrambling at the fingertips, they are literally going to be knocked out because it's like, I can't go through this again, People will be so desperate, they'll be so fed up and frustrated. And also the fact that the strain that's come through is potentially worse than the first, it justifies more intense control measures. They're not going to just bring the police and the army and the police state style nonsense, immediately, because it's not warranted. As much as they're saying people are flouting the rules and doing this and doing that and they're being selfish, and to be honest with you, the streets are quite empty. More people are getting coronavirus from somebody in their own household because they're locked in and they're passing it around each other than they are, catching it from a random person in the street now. So, it doesn't make sense to say, oh, well, it was people not adhering to social distancing. And, like I said, there's a lot of red herrings. One of the red herrings I personally feel, I've said it many a time, is why are they constantly talking about PPE? Like, what the hell are you talking about? If coughing and sneezing spreads the virus from a person who's infected to a person who is not, the person who needs to wear the PPE is the sick person. Okay? You are the one that needs the visor and the face screen and the mask and the overalls and whatever else it is that they're going to give you. Because think about it. Say, for example, the number of health workers and sick people is a ratio of 1 to 1. There's as many doctors and nurses and medical staff as there are sick people. Every time you as a medical professional go to a different patient, you have to change your PPE. Fresh apron, fresh glove, probably fresh mask, right? So even a ratio of 1 to 1, if you have a room or a ward with 4 to 6 people, one nurse is going to go through 4 times as much PPE as one patient per round. I don't know if I'm making any sense. So say at 10 o'clock you've got to go in and tend to all the people on this coronavirus room, like small ward. Nurse goes in, puts on PPE, goes to the first person, changes PPE, goes to second person, changes PPE, goes to third person, changes PPE, goes to fourth person. In one visit, that one nurse has used 4 sets of PPE. I'm assuming, I don't know, maybe they don't change the overall thingy, but I'm sure they have to change at least the disposable apron and maybe the gloves and the mask. That's fine because that's standard practice. Why don't you just make the people who are sick wear the PPE? And that way you can tend to them, move it. Once you've finished tending to them, you put it back on. That's 1 set per person per day. PPE doesn't stop people really infecting you, because if the person coughs and sneezes on your face, you still have droplets with the virus in it on your skin. You want to stop the spread, stop people who are sick spreading it. Put the PPE on them. Again, another red herring, the ventilator business. Ventilators are more for people with pneumonia, and we know when you sedate people, they're more likely to get pneumonia. I've heard of several cases of people who went to hospital. They died of pneumonia when that wasn't the reason they went to hospital. But because they were in a sedated state, it caused them to develop pneumonia whilst in hospital. And that's what ended up killing them. It's not so much a complication of the virus. It's just the fact that you have these people sedated on a ventilator that's making the situation worse. And that ultimately contributes to their death. So when you hear them talking about testing, vaccines, ventilators, PPE, 5G, bejesus, the fig juice contributing to, CD19, it's really just a red herring. It's a red herring. It's a breadcrumb trail that's designed to take you away from something that's happening in the back. There's things that are being ignored and not really talked about, and that's what they don't want you to see. There's things that they're doing that they don't want you to be aware of or alerted to. For example, Iran put its first military satellite up yesterday, and that's for surveillance and reconnaissance and this and that, So how come in the midst of this crisis, you've got time to be putting military satellites into space? Okay. Obviously, we have this hot mic situation. I just feel like they want you to know that they want people to be worked up about this situation so that they end up rebelling and revolting. And then afterwards, they turn around and say, when this thing comes back, oh, they won't adhere to the rules. They won't adhere to the restrictions. They'll say, oh, you lied to us like you did last time. And this time there really could be a wolf. There really could be a virus. But because people are so disillusioned by, the lies of this, event, they end up not taking the proper precautions and really getting sick. So all these red herrings, and that, also leads me to this whole thing about this chip that Bill Gates wants to bring in, monitoring your every movement, and you get rewarded like a rat in a lab, with some cryptocurrency points. It just seems too easy. It just seems too, he knows. he knows when he puts this patent out, or when it leaks, or when it gets out, that people are automatically going to see the 666 and decipher the well encrypted code. You know, it wasn't even hidden. Now, I'm not saying that Bill Gates is not trying to enslave people. I'm not saying Bill Gates is not trying to enslave people. I'm not trying to say that he's not trying to chip people. I'm not saying that they don't want to have AI governing us and watching us, all these drones, people being scanned with full body scanners, and the thing can tell whether you have a temperature, all this tracking and tracing. Or we need to trace who you've been in contact with, so we're going to use your mobile phone in order to see which other people you've been close to. Obviously that doesn't make any sense. Just because you're in close proximity to somebody doesn't mean to say you're interacting with them in such a way that you could give them a virus. What if you're just sitting with people in the bus? So when it alerts you that this person beside you is tested positive for CV-19 or whatever, what's going to happen? You're going to be ostracized. You're going about your daily business, and like in China, how they're catching people and throwing them in the van, like, the dog catcher catches some stray dogs. You turn around and there's police. Oh, we think that you've done this and you've done that. Obviously, they're going to say, we're not trying to identify people, we're just trying to identify symptoms, because most people who believe the official narrative, they're going to believe that this is about safety. They're not going to think that eventually this technology is going to be gradually ramped up to take away your freedoms and your privacy. Now, if you are going to get a chip that tells you, every time you touch your face, or every time you make a move, or you have absolutely no freedom and no privacy once that thing is in your body, monitoring you and gathering even more data about you. This is why they want people not to use cash, because all of this is going to enable them to gather massive amounts of data about us and our spending habits during a time of crisis. If you're using cash, it becomes a bit more hard to know specifically what demographics are doing what kind of spending. Maybe you can talk about trends in terms of stores, but you can't talk about trends on a very specific level in terms of which demographic is doing what. But when everybody's got cards and they're paying with, other types of cashless currencies, now you can very specifically pinpoint how people are going to operate in such a situation. And, it might sound bad to say, this is why I said from the beginning that there's a bit of maybe gerricide going on. They're deliberately taking out the older people, because a lot of older people don't have mobile phones, they don't use technology, they don't use social media, they're not interested in a lot of the stuff. They're going to say this smells a bit fishy. And if Bill Gates is going to pretty, make us like the Matrix, where they're harvesting energy and things from our bodies, an elderly person who's not moving, who can't, get on board with the app, who's not going to be completing tasks to get cryptocurrency, they are useless for this system. So in order to streamline the people who are useful, removing the people who are not going to be able to participate in this, it's part of the course, it's part of the plan. Okay, so I'm very suspicious of all of this truth that's suddenly coming out. We know that the scripture says in, I believe, the book of Daniel, that knowledge will increase. So yes, knowledge is increasing, information is increasing, but we shouldn't be lured into a false sense of security thinking we've got it all figured out. We don't have it all figured out. They are telling us what they want us to know in order to shape what we think, and then what we think and how we act is then going to be used to justify the next move that they make, Okay, so even this Bill Gates posting online thanking care worker Marina Abramovich fiasco. I mean, come on, let's just be real. This is just a setup. He is testing the waters to see how people are going to react to him. What is the temperature? Because any publicity is good publicity. And if you're trying to promote an agenda, if you're trying to promote a mind state, or if you're trying to instigate like a rebellion, obviously something inflammatory like thank you health workers, knowing full well that vaccines are not foolproof. Sometimes vaccines make people sick. They give people other health complications. Sometimes trying to vaccinate, some say even with this particular virus, that when you try to treat it, you actually make the symptoms worse. And that's why so many people don't necessarily make it once they get to that critical stage. So putting up a post online saying thank you to health workers, especially when you have all these stories coming out about we need ventilators and equipment and beds and things. It's just ridiculous. I just feel like they're giving people so much inflammatory stuff to talk about. It's a deflection from other things that's going on in the news and the media. And it's also trying to get the people worked up enough to start rebelling, revolting, protesting, maybe even another flare-up of the virus, and then they'll have the excuse that they need to institute martial law because people are so, frustrated and annoyed about, allegedly being lied to. But the whole thing was a lie from the beginning. Even the so-called truth tellers who were trying to quote-unquote whistleblow and expose, that it wasn't all what it cracked up to be from the beginning, they're all just different sides of the same coin. They're all peddling deception in order to create confusion. And, Gates, he wants to test the water. He wants to see a lot of people saying, I'm so happy to see people waking up. Well, are we waking up? Are we really waking up? If he's putting out a bait and we're latching onto it hook, line and sinker, you're in a catch-22, because I don't think that he thinks people are stupid for not seeing what he's doing per se, because there's so much information about people trying to chip us and track us and watch us that how can you not be aware? From the young to the old are starting to realize something's not quite right about this situation. But I think where people are going wrong is they're taking it too much at face value, and they're getting excited about allegedly discovering something that was never hidden. It was left in plain sight in order to be discovered and discussed. And while we're all distracted talking about this, patented chip system, which we've talked about for a long time, other things are being implemented that we're just not seeing. So let me know what you think in the comments section. Is this just another litmus test? Are we being given trails of breadcrumbs that lead to nowhere? Do they want their plans to be exposed so that they have an excuse to implement other things? What kind of things are happening in your area? What kind of news stories are going unreported? What kind of changes and policies are being implemented without people being aware because they're so distracted by everything that's going on in the mainstream media? Like, share. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm out for this one. Peace.